Hello and welcome to Human Ascension with Ellie. So, 2025. Here we go. Oh, it's going to be a crazy year. There are no doubts in my mind about that. It's going to be a combination of cringeworthy, exciting, frustrating, probably angering as well from time to time. There'll be good, there'll be bad, there'll be all kinds of things. And there's not much that we can do about a lot of it, whether good or bad, but there are things we can do to make it the best year that it can be for us as individuals. And I thought, well, you know what? The timing is really good for me to put out an episode that is all about making the future the best that it can be from our individual perspective, the things that we have the power to do within ourselves. And so I thought that I would compile a little how-to episode on how to build ourselves up so that we can turn 2025 into the best year that it can be in the areas that we're able to control as individuals, but also continuously grow to become stronger and wiser and more resilient. And so this is what I came up with. I have a series of different topics here that I'm going to be talking to you about, and they're all examples of things that we can do to make small changes in our lives that go deeper than just going on a diet or getting fitter or saving money or something like that. This is about fixing some of the fundamentals that prevent us from being the best that we can be. So let's see how I went in my research. The first step when it comes to improving your prospects for the future, in particular for 2025 and any year moving forward, is to get to know yourself. And the best way to do that is to define your purpose as an individual. So define your purpose. Why are you here? What is it that you're supposed to achieve? It sounds really simple, but you know what? I've mentioned similar things about defining your purpose and thinking about what's important. And occasionally I'll get someone who'll comment to me and say, but what if you don't know what your purpose is? How are you supposed to figure that one out? Well, that was the very first thing I researched. There are ways to help you to be able to figure out what your purpose is. Firstly, reflect on your values. So what are your values? What do you believe? What's important to you? What are you passionate about, for example? And then what are your strengths? What are the things that you're good at? What are you talented in? Do you get feedback from other people, or can you seek out feedback from other people about what your strengths are, the things that are most memorable about you, the things that people admire in you? Or you don't even have to, if you're embarrassed to do that, you don't have to ask. You can always think back to the things that people said, wow, I wish I was a bit more like you in terms, I wish I was more patient, or I wish I had your energy, or I wish I could paint like you, or I wish I had the same command of, the English language or whatever language that you speak. I wish that, I wish that I was so good at doing something. It could be anything. It could be driving. It could be applying makeup. It could be cooking. It could be anything. What is it that your strengths are? Are you clever? Are you well educated? Are you helpful and patient? Are you a good teacher? Are you a good carer? What is it that's good about you? That's a really important thing, and you can find that information within and also by thinking back to the comments that other people have made. But also, what do you love? What are your hobbies? What is it that you retreat to when you want to have time to yourself, when you want to meditate and relax your mind? People have all kinds of funny little hobbies that they don't even realize are hobbies, and they might not realize are also methods of meditation. For me, strangely enough, tarot is one of those things. When I do tarot, I switch off from everything else. All I'm thinking about is what the cards say and what it might relate to. And so that for me is a form of meditation, strangely enough. But also another form of meditation for me, which is kind of strange. I've got a few actually. My veggie patch is one. I've got a really prolific veggie patch. It's actually quite big considering the size of our property is quite small. And I'm not quite self-sustaining in terms of vegetables because certain things take up too much space and I just won't grow them because I don't have that much room. But I could live quite well on just the veggies that I'm producing every spring and summer. And for me, when I go out there and I pull all the extra bits out and weed and make sure that the tomatoes are growing beautifully and I kind of have to fight with the birds to get to the tomatoes before, especially the cherry tomatoes before they do and things like that. And I do it all without pesticides or anything. So there is a possibility that, I might get the occasional worm or caterpillar bite or something like that. But I like the idea that it's all organic as well. I find that to be meditative when I'm just out in the garden. I also find doing research really meditative as well, like the kind of research that I've done for today's show, strangely. And the reason why is because I'm so focused on what it is that I'm trying to build in my research that I switch off when it comes to anything else. So think about what your hobbies are. My mother, well, she has a hobby. It's not really a hobby, but it's a meditative exercise. My mom loves to cook and she's a really good cook. And I remember her telling me a few times that she finds it really relaxing, which is another way of describing meditation, to chop vegetables into tiny little cubes. She finds that really meditative and relaxing. And that's not the first person I've heard that from. I remember other people saying that chopping vegetables into tiny little pieces, they find that really relaxing too. It could be anything, but you could, cycling, a sport, swimming, whatever it is, reading a good book, anything that makes you feel good may also be a secret to your purpose as well. And of course, another thing in order to be able to identify your purpose is to identify what you admire in other people. So what is it about a person that you follow or are close to or are related to or work with or something do you really admire that you think is one of the wonderful things about them, something that you would feel very proud to possess within yourself, because chances are what you're seeing is an aspect of something that's within you and could build into part of your purpose as well. Another way to be able to define your purpose and identify it is to reflect on some of the challenges and the failures that you have perceived to have encountered in your lifetime, because those challenges and failures are undoubtedly areas where you've learnt lessons. People always strive to win, don't they? They always strive to be a success, but they don't really learn very much from the success. What they learn from is the failure or the challenges that they encountered along the way. As I'm speaking to you today, I've actually been thinking that I'm going to be doing an episode on the Ellie Dreams and Under channel about my experiences publishing my very first book, self-publishing my first book. Because as I was seeing this in my research about reflecting on challenges and failures, I realized that when I was publishing this book myself from having no knowledge whatsoever, that I learnt the hard way very quickly, mind you, because I didn't procrastinate. I didn't sit on it. As soon as I realized there was an issue, I jumped on it and tried to resolve it. But I learnt through practical experience lessons that I can never forget now, that I might be able to share with other people so that they can also learn from it as well. It'll make it a little bit more easy for others to be able to do the same thing that I did. And so I'm going to do a video, I think, this week, just talking about some of those challenges that I experienced and how I resolved them and the lessons that I learnt. And so that's just a practical example. Also, you can look at things like significant life events that defined you as a person. I'm going to tell you, I have one that I've mentioned a few times. It's a really simple one. And I had a moment in my life where I made the mistake of listening to a professor at university and at college. And he told me that he didn't think that I was well suited to do the course of study that I was doing. and he was wrong. But because I was young and impressionable, and I hadn't matured to a point where I understood myself as well as I do now. I took it for granted that because he's the professor, then he's an authority figure and he knows what he's talking about, and therefore I should change my major, which I did. And it's the dumbest thing I could have done. I should have actually told him to mind his own business and go back to work. That's what I should have done. But instead, I listened to him, and then I went and I changed my major, and I should have stayed with what I was doing. However, it turned out okay because it means that I came full circle and I'm back now talking to you. And I feel as though I'm living my purpose now. And so I did it the long way, but here I am. So it all worked out. But that is an example of a significant life event for me because I remember the conversation. I remember the impact that it had on me as a person. And now I can look back and think of what I learnt from that experience. And that was that I should trust what's truly in my heart about who I am and what I'm capable of and what I should be doing with my life, rather than listening to some other person who doesn't know me half as well as I know myself. So that's just an example. On the same kind of level, another way to be able to identify your purpose is just to listen to your intuition. Be still in the moment. Be present and mindful about what it is that you feel deep down. It's not about what you want exactly. It's a little bit different. When it comes to your intuition and understanding who you are and what's right for you and what your purpose is, it really is more about knowing the truth, even if you don't necessarily want to know that truth. You know it. It's the truth inside you. So, for example, if you've actually, I have a practical example of this. I have a distant relative who, when we were younger, once said to me, we were quite younger. I think we were late teenagers maybe. This relative said to me that they wanted to be a famous singer. And they wanted to be on stage. They wanted everyone to love them and come to their concerts and everything, except they couldn't sing. They couldn't sing. And I remember even as a young person when they were saying this to me, I kind of knew that they sang pretty badly. They weren't much of a dancer either. And they didn't even project that kind of star quality that would capture the interest of other people in that way. They may have developed it down the line, but at that point in time, I think that they were thinking about what they wanted and what sounded attractive, but they weren't listening to their intuition, to what's actually real inside them, because real may have actually been saying to them, may have been whispering quietly, you should be a librarian, not a superstar, a librarian or a doctor or a dog walker, or who knows what their purpose in life is. And it doesn't just mean, a job. It could just be you're there to provide something to humanity or to the world or to the animal kingdom or something. But no, they wanted to be a superstar. Well, today, so many years later, decades later, they are not a superstar. They're not a singer. I don't think I've ever heard them sing again. So clearly they went off in another direction. Another way to be able to identify your purpose is to write down your thoughts. Things like keeping a journal can help you to understand yourself. Even creating a blog, Substack, is an example of that. You're sharing your thoughts with other people, but you're also sharing them with yourself. You're revealing them to yourself. And sometimes when you write things down, they become apparent to you consciously for the first time. They may have been sitting in your subconscious, but they kind of come to the surface. And this can be a way for you to be able to identify yourself and get to know yourself a little bit better. And you don't have to do it on Substack. It doesn't have to be a public thing. You could do it privately. You could just keep a little computer journal or written journal by your bedside, or even tap notes into your mobile phone, but just kind of get to know yourself in writing, and that will help as well. And another way to be able to recognize your life purpose, or to help it to build a recognition of your life purpose, is to give back to others. to volunteer your time and to show kindness and support for other people. Because by doing that, you're actually able to see the impact that your life has on them in ways that will transform and become important in upon reflection. So you can look back and you can say, wow, do you know what? I was really good at that because I can see the difference that it made for that person. So that's another way of actually being able to understand yourself and your purpose. And then once you discover your purpose or begin to build from that, it's important to move forward with that purpose. Do more than just dream about who you are and why you're here. Actually put it into action. So we're going to be talking about putting it into action and how to do that a little bit later in the show. One of the things that will help you in that endeavor is to live with integrity. And this is not just about being a nice person. For example, one of the things that you could do differently if it's been a problem for you in the past or an obstacle in the past is don't make promises that you won't be able to keep. This is promises for other people, but also promises that you make for yourself or to yourself. So for example, if you're sitting here at the beginning of January in 2025 and you're thinking, right, I'm going to lose 50 pounds and I'm going to do it in 6 months. I'm not sure that that's necessarily, that's goal setting in a way, but I'm not sure that setting goals are the most important part of being able to achieve something. In a way, what you're doing is you're overwhelming yourself with an expectation. So every single time you get on the scales and you see that you've not lost that 50 pounds, what you're doing is you're shortening the timescale for your goal, which means the pressure begins to ramp up because what used to be 6 months could end up being 5 months or 4 months or 3 months. And next thing you know, you've got 2 weeks left and you still haven't lost 50 pounds. And so you feel at that point as though you're a bit of a failure and it's overwhelming. It's really bad for your mental health and your sense of self, but also you've just wasted time worrying about one more thing that you haven't been able to do. Instead, move forward in other ways, but don't necessarily promise yourself something unless you know deep down inside that you can achieve exactly what you've promised yourself or another person. Another aspect of living with integrity is to stop complaining about things. This is your life, right? It's nobody else's life. And so take control of your life. You can't control everything around you, but you can make the most of everything you do have control over. And complaining about something is, everyone, I have a bit of a whinge now and then, but I'm still a glass is half full kind of a person. When something happens, you might hear an Aussie word fly out. Generally, those Aussie words, they're special. They have 4 letters. And I try not to say them too often here on the show. I don't think I ever have actually on this show. I have on the YouTube channel a couple of times, but I do try to self-monitor in that respect. But every now and then when the camera is off, you might hear a couple of 4-letter words. And that's me having a bit of a complaint about something that hasn't quite gone right, or it's been a negative surprise for me or something like that. But I am the kind of a person who I am quite optimistic by nature. And so I don't dwell. And because I don't dwell, I think about, can I resolve something? If I can, I put that into action. I try and resolve it. If I can't resolve it, then I try to let it go. But I don't harp on it, and I don't spend my life complaining about it, because complaining is just, it's a waste of energy. It doesn't accomplish anything. And it does make you feel as though you're not in control of your life. It is your life. And so do what you can to control the aspects of your life that you can control. And there's more advice on that coming up in this show. But the life that you live is yours. And so complaining about it is not going to fix it. There are other ways to make life better if you're not happy with the way that it is. The most important thing is to make the most of what your life is. And that might mean traveling the world and experiencing new things, but it could also be something entirely more local. It could be just about learning as much as you can, or even reaching out to others and teaching them what you know. So making the most of life, it doesn't necessarily mean hopping on a plane and spending a fortune and going to Egypt and looking at, or to the Louvre in France or anything like that. You don't have to actually be anywhere other than where you currently are. It can be a small thing or it can be a big thing, but embody whatever it is that you need to embody in order to make your life your own, and do it to the best of your ability. So maintaining your mental attitude and your focus is also important. Have you ever heard the phrase, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak? Have you ever heard that? Well, the person who actually coined that phrase, the first person to say that, was a man called Epictetus. Epictetus was born in Turkey in 50 AD. He was born into slavery, actually, but he earned his freedom and went on to become a great Stoic philosopher. Epictetus's principle was that to maintain a positive mental attitude and to improve focus, what we should do is we should limit our opinions and our judgments of the things that are around us. He said to spend less time arguing our viewpoint, so that we can prove to everyone that we know everything. And we should spend less time doing that and more time listening and learning. Because if we already know everything, then we can't learn anything new. And so we should speak less and listen more. Unless, of course, we're doing a radio show, in which case we need to keep talking. So I often say, though, I often say that I'm not the expert. I say it on this show all the time. I'm not an expert on any of the topics that I talk about. But I love to learn. I love to do research. It's kind of my meditation, one of the methods of meditation. I love to examine new things, and I love having you come along for the ride with me. Another thing that's important moving forward, to be the best that you can be in the future, is to manage your level of anxiety. Did you know that anxiety is actually a form of creativity, but it's one of the most destructive forms of creativity? Anxiety is when you create things to worry about that haven't actually happened yet. That's what anxiety is. And in order to maintain a positive mental outlook, you should be channeling your sense of creativity into positive things. So instead of creating and being creative with your worry and basically degenerating your mental health and your physical health by being anxious about everything, regardless of whether it's manifested or threatens to manifest in the future, channel that creativity that you have, because you've proven that you are a creative person just by being anxious. Channel that anxiety into a creativity that is very positive. Do something artistic or musical or with literary prowess. Impress the world with your creativity in other ways, because it's healthier and also it may lead you to a positive life's purpose. That's a beautiful way of looking at anxiety, isn't it? It's a form of creativity, which means it gives us more options as to how we can channel our creativity. Another thing that's really good to be able to do is to slow down. Instead of worrying too much about your goals and what you want to achieve and where you want to end up, pay attention to the process, because the process is where the learning comes from, and the process is also that method of growth that's going to get you to wherever it is you need to be. Avoid things like unnecessary competition or comparison against other people. I know that there are people out there who've got more money. I mean, I can even use myself as an example. Actually, here's a really practical example. I started off doing this show on a Friday evening. So it was airing, I'm pre-recorded, but my show was airing as a newbie on KGRA at 11 p.m. Friday night, which is not bad because, if you're sitting at home, 11 p.m. Eastern on a Friday, you might want to listen to my voice. But then I got bumped up, kind of, I don't know how it happened. I got bumped up to prime time on Wednesday. So my show, I think today is airing probably 9 p.m. Eastern on New Year's Day. Yeah, 9 p.m. Eastern New Year's Day, so on Wednesday. It's airing a little bit earlier on the Ellie Dreams Another channel because everything does. I kind of air it on Ellie and ends up on the radio, and then it ends up in other places as well, Spreaker and other forums as well. But I think on KGRA it's airing at 9 p.m. Eastern, which I should be, thrilled. Except I've actually asked to move it. Well, I didn't ask to move it. I asked for something to change. Being primetime, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care about that because I think that if people want to hear this show, they're going to find the show wherever it ends up being. I'm actually being moved to midnight Friday. And the reason for that is it's the last show of the night on a Friday night, which means I don't have to adhere to exactly 56 minutes of talking. I'm thrilled. It means that my show could be 3 hours long. It could be 45 minutes long. It could be 20 minutes long. It could be exactly an hour and 26 seconds. It doesn't matter. My show will be as long as it takes for me to talk about the things in completion that I want to talk about and not a second longer. And for me, that's the process. That's me paying attention to the process. I don't feel comfortable artificially fitting my show into exactly 56 minutes. I'd much rather let the process pan out so that it's exactly as long as it needs to be in order for me to feel as though I've accomplished the show. And so I'm sure that the station was really surprised when I was thrilled to be moved to midnight on Fridays, which I think is coming up in a week or two. But I am, because it means that I no longer have to watch the clock. I could just talk for as long as it takes, and then that's the end of it, and everyone goes to bed. So there you go. I have different kinds of priorities, I guess you could say, than just to win and to have the most watched show at the most watched time. So that's actually just an example of that. There is no need to win. The concept of winning is an artificial construct that humanity has placed on something. Instead, true enjoyment is what's important when it comes to whatever it is that you do. Enjoy the winding path that gets you to whatever the destination is, rather than spending all of your energy yearning for the destination. So I'm not saying that, you don't want to set some kind of goals for the future, but don't make the goals the be-all and end-all of your measurement of whether or not you've succeeded in life and in developing yourself. Because that process that you've undertaken in order to move in the direction that you want to move into is adding things to your life already. So be mindful of that and enjoy that process and learn from that process as well. So when it comes to actually setting priorities and goals, the goals to me, as far as I'm concerned, are not quite as important. But the priorities are, because in a way, the priorities, if you set your priorities right, the goals will kind of achieve themselves. So in the first instance, think about the things that you're attached to. So it could be you may have certain habits that you're attached to or people that you're attached to. And also, personal belongings, for example. Think about whether or not those attachments, whether you're in control of those attachments, and do you define them and the way that they are in your life, or are they in control of you? So, for example, one thing that I have to kind of consider in my life, and it's not over the top, so, it's only a little thing. I do love to take a break in the middle of the day and I go and get myself an almond latte with honey, which I love very much. But I can't put everything on hold just because I want that almond latte with honey. So if I am, if I'm getting very close to the conclusion of what I'm working on, or if I'm right in the middle of that major discovery of information or something, I'm not going to stop everything and hop in the car and go and get myself an almond latte with honey, even if I really want to. because that almond latte with honey doesn't control me. I value it because it's a like a little bonus, right? When I published my book and pressed that publish button, the first thing I did was I went and I got myself an almond latte with honey, because it was my way of just celebrating the moment. And I sat and I looked at my book on the screen, and I was really thrilled that it was published and things like that. But I certainly didn't let the coffee interrupt the process that I was enjoying, because I simply had to have it. Now, coffee is a little thing. It's not a big deal. But, your habit might be binging on booze on a Friday night, or spending a certain percentage of your disposable income on gambling. Or it could be this person that just keeps interfering with your life and injecting drama and conflict. It could be anything. It could be that your closet is just full of stuff, and it's getting in the way of you being able to enter your closet and get the things that you want. Personally, I don't own a lot of things. I'm not struggling in any way. I have everything that I need, but I'm a little bit of a minimalist. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't label myself as being a minimalist, because I'm not defined by that exactly. But I get a little bit uncomfortable when I have too much clutter around me. And I like everything to serve a purpose. So, for example, my closets are not overly full with clothes that I don't wear. My kitchen cabinets don't have a whole bunch of junk that I don't even know what it is anymore. As soon as I look at something and I think, do I use that? No. Okay, then I tend to donate it to charity. I hate junk. I really do. I give a lot of things away to charity. And the funny thing is, when I do give things to charity, sometimes I take bags and bags and bags of stuff in one go. Somehow, it comes back to me in some way. I do believe that when you give things, when you give the clutter of your life freely without expecting anything in return, there's a law in the universe that somehow rewards you for it. I never expect it. I'm always surprised, but it always seems to happen. And so that's an incentive to kind of get rid of things that are no longer serving you purpose. I also don't need to have a lot of friends. I value depth and authenticity. Quite frankly, I'd much rather sit in a restaurant and eat a meal all by myself than to be sitting in that same restaurant with a group of people that I can't stand, just because it makes me look popular. I'd rather be alone than be in the company of people that I don't really value. And I'm very careful about who I allow into my life. I value what I have, and I get rid of whatever it is that I don't value. And I don't mean that in a crass way towards humans. I mean, if something is not serving its purpose, or if something is diminishing your life rather than allowing you to kind of grow and mentally prosper and kind of excel the best that you can be, then question the reason why it's in your life. Is it controlling you, perhaps, and taking you down a path that you don't want to go down? I'm a person who's very enthusiastic. I put a lot of effort into everything that I do, but I don't necessarily require recognition. And this is something that's an important part of being able to develop yourself to be the best that you can be. Focus on the effort, not on the recognition. Don't expect to win or to gain some kind of reward or recognition for anything that you've done. Do your best doing things that you love, that you feel are right for you, and do it without seeking any kind of external validation, because the doing should be reward enough, and that's the healthiest mindset to have. But to prioritize. So don't be overly available to every single person or thing that requires your attention or seeks your attention. Focus on what's important to you, not what's urgent in the eyes of other people. And this, for people who work in an office environment or even any kind of job at all, this can sometimes be something that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. People will often say, this is really important, you need to stop what you're doing. I need to talk to you. But if you listen to what they're saying, they need. I have to say, I might be sounding a little bit cheeky here, but I have actually turned around and said, it might be important to you, but it's not the most important thing to me right now, because right now I'm focused on something else. So I can talk to you later, but I can't talk to you now. You don't have to respond to every single email and comment and text message and phone call and knock at the door. You don't have to. If you're on, me personally, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, anything else, Threads. I'm now, I think I have, on Amazon, I have an author page. I'm probably going to end up having other author pages as well on different sites. And so I'm probably going to end up getting messages there as well. But I don't necessarily respond to every message that I get from each of these platforms, because if I did that every time, I wouldn't have time to do the things that are my priorities. You know, this is something that everyone is juggling in their life, and it's really important not to be as available to everyone, not to be overly available. Remember to focus on what it is that is your purpose moving forward, that is for the betterment of mankind in your own small way, and prioritize that. You're only one person, and you can't be everything to everyone. And particularly if you're in a large family, or you work for a big company, or you're public facing or something, there can be a lot of different, very unique expectations placed upon you by the people around you. And you have to remember that every piece of yourself that you give away to others no longer is yours to enjoy. That's just something to think about. So it's also important to kind of control the influences and things that are around you, because they help to shape who you are. You may not realize that they do help to shape you, but remember, we are the average of all of the company that we keep. We're also defined by the way that we respond to things as well. Practicing self-moderation and self-control is a really good way to move forward in a positive way. Focus on controlling your own behavior rather than the behavior of others. We actually can't control what other people do. We can't control what they say. We may not like what they do. We may not like what they say. We may wish that they were different. But the only real control we have is over our immediate, our sense of self, our own behaviors, the things that we say, and also the way that we feel. We should learn to respond in mindful ways to the things that we see. Say, for example, if someone has said something to you that upsets you, or if they've done something that upsets you, in a Stoic perspective, the person who has actually upset you is you, because you've made a decision to be upset. I know that this is really hard, and there are some really upsetting things that happen in the world, and you'd have to be quite a heartless person not to be upset at seeing certain types of cruelty and disregard for others. But when it comes to the little things, for example, when it comes to someone who's just being rude, or who does things that are offensive in relatively minor ways, we may not necessarily have to be upset by that if we choose not to be. And it serves lots of purposes to sort of self-regulate your emotions in that way. First of all, you can't stop what you can't control. So there's no point wasting your labor trying to control the other person. But if you change how you respond, you might find that your resilience will grow. And it also allows you to look at things from a different perspective, because when people do and say things, even if they're doing or saying nasty things about someone else, what they're really doing is they're revealing themselves. And so we can look at it from that perspective and almost smile at the insulting thing that they do or the stupid thing that they say, because we know that rather than upset us, they've revealed to us who they really are. It's an entirely different perspective. On the same kind of level, be very skeptical of influencing forces around you. Evaluate the people and the influences that you encounter in your life, including on social media. And think of it in a couple of ways. If you see someone who appears to be very influential and you're wondering whether or not you should seek their wisdom or listen to the things that they say, imagine for a moment, what if everybody in the world did exactly what this person said they should do? What would the world be like if every single one of the 8 billion people in the world did exactly that? What would the world be like? But also look at it in another way. What if everyone in the world acted just like that person is acting, regardless of what they say? What would the world be like if everyone was exactly like that person? That helps you to be able to decide whether that person deserves to influence you in any way. Show discernment when you're trying to evaluate who should influence your life. Try to differentiate between what's superficial and what's real. You know, people can seem quite influential because they're beautiful or they're young or they're mature or they speak with a lot of confidence or they're really wealthy, but none of those things prove that they're wise and that they should be listened to and learned from. They might have a lot of followers, a lot of people who believe them, but it doesn't prove that they're wise. It doesn't prove their wisdom. If they're preaching a lot or having a lot of opinions about a subject, that doesn't prove that they're wise about it either. Maybe they just like to hear the sound of their own voice. I actually was thinking about some examples of this, and I thought about a few from this week, people that I've actually watched who are kind of considered influencers in some way. I watched a panel of experts that were talking about a particular subject, and there was a screen of about 7 or 8 of them all talking at once on Zoom. And they were talking about how the world should be and how the world should be prepared for certain things and how governments should act and what was probably happening and all of their speculations. And actually it was a lot of speculation and opinion. There was one person in that group who specifically said that they can only really talk about what they have experienced and what they know for a fact because they don't want to speculate. They don't want to fill the air up with their speculation. And the funny thing is, that person out of that entire panel that I was watching, that was the person that I gravitated towards because I thought to myself, they are the only person I want to hear from because they're going to tell me what they know rather than what they believe and what they think and what their opinion is. Regardless of whether a person is a scientist or a reporter or an average guy, show discernment about, is this real? Or is it a bit of, self-promotion and speculation? In another example, I saw a woman talking about the concept of minimalism. She was talking about how her life has changed since she began simplifying everything. And she explained how in the past she'd worried about what other people thought of her and that it really complicated her life and the choices that she'd made. She felt that she always needed to be perfect and it was weighing really heavily on her. But then she decided to simplify and minimalize and now she was free and everything was grand. But while she was talking, I was listening, but I was also watching, and I was watching the way that her video was being produced. She didn't do this video by herself. She had a team of people there who were filming her in lots of different scenarios and things. And so she was working within a team. She was wearing very expensive clothes. She had an expensive hairdo. She had manicured fingernails and she was wearing her makeup perfectly. Her skin looked as though she was quite a pampered person who spends a lot of time getting facials and massages and things. She was talking from a very expensive home that made it look as though it was her home. It had a big balcony where she was standing on the balcony and looking at this glorious view. And there were stone countertops in her kitchen, which aren't cheap. She was using expensive dinnerware when she was providing examples of things that she does. Every single thing in the video that was supposed to be taking place in her home, it proved that everything she had done to produce that video was painstakingly thought through and planned and beautifully choreographed and beautifully glamorized. And that showed me it was a sham. The whole minimalist simplification, because it was very complicated creating a video that was so perfect. I ended up switching her off mid-sentence and I went on to see something else because I just stopped believing her. I didn't believe that she'd really simplified her life. I think she'd found a new way to spin her life in a way that would get her followers. Can you see the difference? Okay. Instead, get inspired by inspiring people and their inspiring messages. I did go looking for an actual simplified minimalist, and I found one. I found a fellow who appeared to genuinely have simplified his life. He lived in a log cabin in the woods with no indoor plumbing, and the way that he presented his messages of inner peace and mindfulness seemed really to be quite authentic. He spends his days as a photographer. So he obviously monetizes his channel, but he also spends his days taking photographs out there in the natural environment. He takes pictures of tiny little aspects of life and then he blows them up and sells them as prints on his channel, as works of art. And he makes money doing that. So he's out there in nature doing photography. He lives in his log cabin and he sustains himself by living as simply as possible and then making his income in really simple ways. And that sounded a lot more authentic because we still need to be able to sustain ourselves. But this was genuine simplicity and it was lovely. He also had a very different vibe. He wasn't concerned about the appearance of every single thing. And I watched him with a lot of interest. It was a complete comparison to the other one. But there is a favorite saying that I'm going to share with you when it comes to practicing discernment, when it comes to things like people who are going to influence your life and learning to recognize the difference between real and fake when it comes to people who are going to help us to shape our lives and our perceptions. And this saying comes from a fellow YouTuber. There's a channel on YouTube called Daily Stoic. And I referred to Daily Stoic as part of the research that I did for today's show because Stoicism is about being able to build your resilience and your strength as a person by demonstrating virtues and moving forward in positive ways. Well, this channel, Daily Stoic, is hosted by a fellow called Ryan Holiday. And Ryan is the author of quite a number of best-selling books on Stoicism and its application in modern life. He shares daily Stoic wisdom, lessons to be learned, and also different practices that can help you to live better lives by applying the ancient Stoic principles from way back, hundreds of years ago. Ryan is a very inspirational person, and I believe in his authenticity. He owns a bookstore and writes prolifically, has quite a natural life. He's very conscious of making the most of his life, and he manages to do a million brilliant things every day. But somehow he also finds a way to balance that brilliance and that hard work with self-care as well, because he lives the principles that he teaches others to live. He actually is quite a renowned speaker and has spoken to many universities and sporting groups and he's done seminars and all kinds of things on the topic of Stoicism. And I'm a big fan. I really like him and I really like his channel. So anyway, this saying of his, which is one of my favorite sayings for the modern day. He says, "Don't take advice from awful people who are worshipped by losers on the internet." Don't take advice from those people just because they're being worshipped by losers on the internet. I love that. And I think when I heard him say that, he was actually talking about a fellow called Andrew Tate. Now, very specific. For anyone who doesn't know who Andrew Tate is, here's a summary that I lifted off the internet. Okay. Andrew Tate is a controversial figure known for his social media presence and self-proclaimed misogynistic views. He was born with the name Emery Andrew Tate III on December the 1st, 1986. He is an American-British former professional kickboxer and internet personality. Andrew Tate gained notoriety after appearing on the British reality TV show Big Brother in 2016, but was removed from the show after a video emerged showing him attacking a woman. Since then, Tate has built a significant following on platforms like Twitter or X and TikTok, where he promotes an ultra-masculine lifestyle. His comments and behaviour have sparked widespread criticism and led to his deplatforming from several social media sites. Tate is currently facing multiple legal issues, including charges of human trafficking, rape, and forming a criminal organisation to exploit women in Romania. He and his brother Tristan have denied all allegations and are fighting the charges. That is a verbatim statement that came up when I did a search on Andrew Tate on the internet. I also consulted my AI friend, Curiosity, who gave me a very concise response. And he didn't have anything nice to say about Andrew Tate. This is exactly what he said, actually. This is a direct quote of what Curiosity said in response to my query about Andrew Tate. He said, and I quote, verbatim, "It is important to be mindful of the influences we allow into our lives. If you ever need information on more positive and inspiring content than Andrew Tate, I'm here to help." That's what he said, with an exclamation point at the end. That's a cut and paste. I've got to love Curiosity. He's a good mate. I like him. And he's got my best interests at heart. So, yes, I agree with artificial intelligence and I agree with Ryan Holiday of Daily Stoic. Don't waste your life listening to awful people who are worshipped by losers on the internet. So let's take action. Do important things even when you don't want to. Stop delaying your life and start living now. Stay grounded. Be present in the moment. Everything you need in life is right here with you. You don't have to be somewhere else. You don't have to be someone else. Everything you need is here. It's here. It's within. Be happy, being seen as ignorant if necessary. Demonstrate humility and be open to learning. It's okay to look as though you don't know anything or as if you're kind of being a bit of a fool because you don't know all the answers. Just practice self-awareness, humility and open-mindedness, because if you're living your purpose, people's opinion, it starts to fade away. The importance of what other people think starts to diminish. What's important is how you feel about yourself moving forward in the way that your life has intended you to always be. That's what's important. Build resilience. Maintain calmness during times of crisis. Remember that a crisis is a temporary fixture and it will not last forever. It will eventually pass. You want to be able to maintain your calmness so that you're still whole on the other side of that crisis. And practice the 4 essential virtues. You can find these virtues in the Bible. You can find them in the Rider-Waite Tarot deck even. They're 4 very simple things that only you can control within yourself. The first one is be courageous. Confront your fear, any uncertainties you may have, and the challenges that you meet as well. And do that with resilience and strength. The second one is to build your wisdom by reflecting on the past. Also by navigating complex situations in a logical, informed and a calmed way. The third one is to practice self-control and moderation and to practice balance in all aspects of your life. Remember that if something controls you, whether it's a person or a drug or a fear and anxiety, what it means is that you're not the person in control. And also demonstrate that balance by acting fairly towards others. Be patient, be tolerant, Accept the fact that we're all different and that we all come from a different history with different life experiences, and that what we bring to the table is just as valuable as any other person. We just bring it from another perspective, and try to act with a sense of equity and equality and fairness when you're dealing with other people. So demonstrate justice. And also think about, in addition to the virtues, this concept of sustainability. Don't overwork yourself. Whatever decisions you make, consider whether you can keep them going forever if necessary. I know that it sounds like I do a lot of work, because I do. I work really hard. But I also prioritize. And people who are in my inner orbit will know that sometimes I'm just not available, and that's because I'm prioritizing. But I also live quite a surprisingly simple life. I'm always looking for more ways to simplify as well, without losing that special sense of whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm naturally a perfectionist. That's my urge, is to be a perfectionist. But as the years have gone by, I've learned to only strive for perfection in some things. And then other things, I don't worry so much about whether they're perfect or not. For example, I mentioned that I've recently published a book. Now, when it comes to the book, I want that book to continuously improve until it can be the best that it can be. And I am a perfectionist in that regard. I have even invited readers to provide me with suggestions by email on how to improve the book if they happen to see any typo, any errors, or any formatting issues, or if I've accidentally put the wrong word in here and there. I've actually provided an email address for people to be able to write to me and tell me what those errors might be. And that way, when I'm producing the next edition of the book, I can incorporate their suggestions. But I don't waste my time trying to be a perfect person, because that is a wasted effort. I don't get all dressed up. I just have a collection of different t-shirts that I wear, and basically I could be gardening in this t-shirt, or walking the dog, or at the supermarket, or sitting here talking to you. I'm afraid it's kind of a uniform for me. And I don't try to exude any kind of perfect style. It's just not me. I'm basically the person that you see. The person you see on the screen, if you're watching, is exactly the same person that you may end up standing behind at the supermarket checkout tomorrow. I basically am just who I am. I'm not a brand. I'm not a guru. I'm just me. I'm just a person. And the way I see it is, if you like me the way I am, then you'll stay. And if you don't like me, then you go find someone that you do like. And it's outside of my area of control. And so I just try not to worry about it too much. But it also means that I don't end up wasting all of my energy worrying about the hundreds of thousands of different opinions that might like or not like me and what they think of me. Instead, I'm just me, and I focus my energy on my purpose and putting it into action. And I believe that I found my purpose, and I believe that I'm living my purpose by talking to you. And by doing it the way that I do, I feel I can sustain it, which means that I can produce a lot, but it's not too taxing. And at the end of the day, I'm happy that I've worked hard, but I'm also mindful and relaxed, and I can get a good night's sleep. And finally, the very last thing, if you want to move forward in 2025 or anywhere in your life in a positive way, is to live your life with kindness and wisdom. It is much easier to be the cleverest person in the room than it is to be the kindest person in a room. But clever is forgotten most of the time. It really doesn't have any real impact on the world. But kindness lives forever. When my father died, as an example, the family got a really big surprise on the day of his funeral. Dad wasn't perfect, because nobody is perfect, but he was a very kind person, and he was kind to everyone around him. He had a lot of patience for relatives and friends and clients and acquaintances, and he was a very generous man in terms of money or stuff, but also with his time and his energy. And when he died, we were reminded of this, because when we went to the church for the funeral service, around about 500 other people tried to show up as well. And there were too many people to actually be able to enter the church. The church was standing room only, and there was a line of people down the street who couldn't fit into the church. It's almost like my dad was a celebrity, but he wasn't. He was just an ordinary small business owner in the area. And he'd lived locally for most of his life as well. But he knew a lot of people who remembered his kindness. And many of the people who came to the church service travelled a very long distance to be there. I didn't even know most of them. In fact, I knew almost none of them. But it was a very unforgettable experience. And I doubt very much that those people showed up to my dad's church service for his funeral because he was clever. I think they came because he was kind. And they remembered that. He'd been kind to them his whole life. My name is Ellie, and you can find me at Ellie Dreams and Under on YouTube. Don't forget to check out my new book. It's called Tarot Well Done, and you can find it in paperback, large print paperback, and ebook on Amazon. It also will be arriving in bookstores and libraries around the world over the next few weeks. And if you'd like my book, Tarot Well Done, right here, to be at your local library or in your local bookstore, then all you have to do is call that establishment and tell them the name of the book and the name of the author and ask them to stock my book. Thank you to everyone who is listening on one of KGRA's broadcasting platforms. If you'd like to become a member of the KGRA viewership family, then just visit live.kgradb.com and put in promo code Ellie to get 30% off your subscription. That's it for today. Have a great 2025. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.